What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical, and we've got some sweet stuff to talk about because obviously this past weekend was Adepticon for everybody who has their head buried entirely in the sand, and they announced a new edition of Warhammer 40,000, so that's pretty sweet. I figure we would take some time today to talk about that. We can do list reviews and sort of the normally scheduled show later on if we have time, but right now I'd kind of just like to go through currently what's announced. This is almost also as a bit of a refresher for myself, but also just to add some thoughts about what's been announced for the new edition. So thanks everyone for coming and jumping in here. Hope everyone had a good weekend. I apologize, my voice is still going to be a little bit hoarse from this weekend from all the yelling, but yeah, I'm psyched. Search for free rules. Free rules is going to be sweet. It's taken them too long, I think, to get on the free rules hype train. Although realistically, I think it's going to be free rules for the first like 2 weeks. And then they're going to drop, the first brace of codexes, and they'll drop probably 2 to 3 codexes, and the people who buy those factions will have to buy them anyway. So it's probably not going to be free rules for too long, but they do get to put that in their marketing for a little bit and, excite people. No hype, just dread. Wow. Yeah, there's a couple of people in the chat who's just like, I guess not excited. I don't know. I think it'll be good. The changes that have been announced so far seem extremely good for the game. And yeah, I hope that they end up being good. I don't know. If it's a shit show, it will also be interesting too. So I guess I kind of win either way. If it's a great game, then 40k is great and we have fun playing 40k. If it's terrible, we got a lot to talk about. Either way, we're going to generate some content. I think I was talking about it on Discord, I think a little bit earlier. The most dangerous part about this announcement is if the new edition is just like a big old nothing. If it's just they like reprinted the 9th edition rules, added like USRs and changed how data sheets looked, and we're like, yeah, that's it. I don't know. And maybe like the missions aren't that great, and everyone's like, okay, well, we'll keep playing 40k, I guess. That would be a little bit sad and boring. I hope it's a big shakeup. That's what I hope. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, that's my biggest concern, I think. Is that it's just like a big nothing burger. And it's no like cool, positive, impactful changes, and also they take ages to fix any issues with it. Because there are going to be some issues, going to be some growing pains, and for sure, like, we're going to run into a situation where, like, wait, yeah, guys, you wrote this rule so it doesn't do anything, like, please change it. And then they're like, I don't know. I'll change it, like, next month. And then we go for, like, these, like, 3-month periods of having an unplayable game. That would suck super hard. That would be awful. New app will have paywalls? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no reason there's no way that doesn't happen for sure. What's up, everybody? Calling out from Webway Games? That's sweet. Is Cam there? Tell Cam to respond to my message. I sent him a message a couple hours ago. For those who don't know, Webway's a local game store. They run GTs and stuff a lot. I've streamed some GTs from their place. By the way, a little bit of an aside. I was not paying attention, I think mostly because of Adepticon prep, and so I didn't realize there's actually a GT near me this weekend. So I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be streaming this weekend. That's going to start on Saturday, run through Sunday, normal 5-round kind of shindig. 32 plus players, I believe, and so we're going to have some good times. So come, I'll create some, I don't have the events on the YouTube for that quite yet, but they'll be streamed on this YouTube channel. Please come and hang out with me all weekend. I'll be streaming some 40k. It'll be sweet. It will be sick. Chris Riley from Michigan. Thanks everyone. Also, while we're talking about people and where they are, a bunch of people came up and said hi to Adepticon. I really appreciate that. So that was super cool too. So thanks everyone who came and hung out with me over there in Chicago. Given how good game balance is right now, it demonstrates they can learn game design. Well, game design and game balance are two different things. Game design inherently like requires you to create interesting and unique interactions that like sort of, you know, make people that make it fun to play the game. I don't think that as much as I have been crediting Games Workshop's developers recently for putting the game in a pretty good place, I don't know if I would call them, you know, particularly great at game design. But I do think that, you know, they have finally gotten the game to a place where it's relatively balanced, and that's cool. They do have some mechanics that are very sweet, but a lot of it's like sort of, you know, more of the same, I guess. The fact that like Astra Militarum right now and Dark Angels right now are like two of the from like a mechanical design standpoint, probably two of the most unintelligently designed codexes in the game, and are number 1 and number 2 is a little problematic, but you know, it is what it is. All right. So I have the website up right now. Just drop over here. I figure we'll just run through some stuff. We'll throw some thoughts in there. More concerned if their streamlined approach would create more complicated interactions with certain models and terrain. I hope not. We have to see more data sheets, though. I said in my video yesterday, I was talking about how, you know, it was potentially problematic if they have a high representation of reactive effects, because I think reactive effects are like some of the biggest like negative player experiences, NPEs. Why is my camera like way far off? Let me fix this real quick here, everybody. Ooh, here you go. Much nicer. I hope it wasn't like that. I guess it probably would have been centered in the other one. What am I trying to say? I think that a focus on reactive effects could be problematic. And that could be a way that, like, simplifying the game, they remove a lot of the core mechanics and they replace them with these, like, reactions and interaction, which is cool and fun, but it also makes the game hard to parse, especially if you're not, like, enfranchised. And that could be a real problem. But who knows? We'll see. Codexes should just have fluff, backstory, and painting. I would love that for sure, too. Yeah. Yeah, if they move to... I mean, honestly, like... with their new systems, it does feel kind of like they could just sell the codexes, like the card packs as the codexes. I'm sure that maybe they would be like that. That would maybe restrict things too much, but you could have like your faction and subfaction abilities on a card that you just put out in front of you before each game. And then all of your unit data sheets are on a card with their weapon profiles and stuff. And then all your stratagems are on cards. I don't know what else you would really need, like enhancements. You could put them on cards too. Oh, and then you could put them next to the cards that your characters have. Perfect, we did it. We fixed 40k, chat. It's a card game now. Let's go. Reactive stratagems, I think, are different. To be clear, I just see some comments in there about reactive stratagems. I think reactive stratagems are much different because you are representing that you have an effect available to you if you are holding up command points. So if your opponent says, oh, how many CP do you have? And you say, I have 3 CP. Then they're like, suddenly in their mind, they're like, what can you do with those 3 CP? And maybe they'll ask, hey, do you have anything that happens when I target you? Hey, do you have any reactive stuff? The problem with the data sheet, the Termagant data sheet I see, is that there's no indication to the opponent that Termagants can move out of activation, right? It's not like you put a token down and you say, as long as I have this token next to me, I can spend that token to move out of activation. There's no indicator on the table. They just have to remember that Termagants can do that. And if there's only a couple of those in the game, that's fine. But if every unit in the game, or half the units in the game, or the units that are most played, all have those and have potentially different ones, you know, what if Devastators can shoot on death? And what if Assault Intercessors can fight on death? And what if, like Assault Intercessor, and what if like Assault Terminators can heroically intervene, but Assault, like shooting Terminators have an effect in your opponent's shooting phase, like a reactive shot in your opponent's shooting phase. And then suddenly you're like, if you branch out into a million pans, like suddenly you're like, oh my god, I have to remember every single one of these little like unit archetypes does a thing. I'm not saying it's going to be like that because we literally just don't know, but like I said in my video yesterday, 100% of the data sheets we currently have a reactive effect on them. And it's, you know, good for an interaction standpoint, but maybe bad for a memory standpoint. $40K the tactical deck building game. I deploy my termagants in attack mode. Let's go. Oh, sorry. I didn't silence my phone, everybody. Cam just texted me. Greg, was that you? Did you do that? I hope so. That's good. We're doing it live, everybody. What if the rule state that you can have a unit that can act out of your turn, they need to have a token? I mean, maybe. But then, like, suddenly, you know, you have to provide the tokens. You have to remember what the tokens are for. I mean, I do think that that helps. But if every single unit in your army has a token, then suddenly that just becomes, like, meaningless. Hello! What are you doing here? Inky's gonna give us some commentary. Waiting for them to put zany reactions like your opponent must close their eyes. Oh my god, could you imagine? Like AOS, they just like 1.0 AOS this shit. Like Imperial Fist get a bonus if you have a big mustache. Hi kitty. You are right in you're right where I okay. Hi. Here's the cat, everybody. Go back to my main monitor. Inky, say hello to chat. Oh no, you just want to purr. Someone got the lion already? Really? Did they like Dante it up? Where they're like, oops. We were supposed to send you Gilliman, but we sent you the other Primarch instead. Did you hear all of the, there was a lot of conspiracy theories about that. That was like, oh, it was like a native marketing scheme. They sent it on purpose. The warehouse messed up on purpose so that somebody would get it and leak it. Or it was like a Games Workshop employee that leaked it. Whatever. Who cares? That's cool though. Somebody got the line. Yeah, Inky likes it when I talk. Every time I'm talking to the camera, she wants to be included, so she comes and hangs out. Anytime if I'm just sitting here doing nothing, she is, and the camera's not on, she doesn't care. But as soon as I start talking, she's like, "Oh hey, time to hang out." Do you think they'll mention that unit abilities can only be used once per phase, and if you have more than one, to encourage more list diversity? I think that we would. Have seen an indication on the card. If the ability, let's go to the Termagant ability here. Oh, this is the other article. Here we go. Let's go to the Termagant card. I also have it on my computer. I don't know why I'm looking for it. Sorry, everyone. There we go. So if the ability had a keyword on it, so if it's like if it said like Skulking Horrors parentheses reaction or something, the Games Workshop loves to do that. They love to add little keywords, like like we have on the weapons now, right? Where they have like these weapon attributes. I think that I would assume that there's more mechanics involved. They may just say that if you have an ability that says, like, if you have an ability that's used once per turn, you can only use one instance of that ability. That could be the direction that they go in. But again, that's kind of clunky because there's no indication that's how it works on the card itself. And I think they want to centralize as much information in the card as they can. So you don't have to be looking through a rule book. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the 40k rules are so bloated, to be honest, right? That like they always introduce these little exceptions. So like I'm sort of talking myself into it. Yeah, sure. I mean, they could have some extra mechanics in the background of this card that we just don't know about. I don't know. But I think that I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're putting so much effort into making the game more streamlined. They would not introduce the game with the mechanics that were like inherently sort of unknowable, right? By baking unintuitive interactions into the rulebook. Old USR Twin Link was reroll ones to hit. I think it was you just rerolled the hit roll. if I remember correctly. But that was in 5th edition. Because theoretically it was like you got double the shots, but you could only ever hit the one number of times. Was the thinking. There was very few ways to reroll back in the day too. You didn't have like Captain Auras and stuff. Rerolls were very rare. Master artisans or a master crafted weapon could reroll a single hit roll. That was the only thing it did. Now it's like +1 damage and you master artisan it and you reroll ones at yourself and all that shit. Wonder if removing the psychic phase will make wound cap models more powerful? That's a good point, actually. It probably will. If they keep wound caps, I mean, who knows, right? Like, literally everything's up in the air. You know, we're looking at termagants here, and every single stat's different, and they have different abilities, and clearly they work, you know, much different than they did previously. So I think that there's a non-zero chance that phase cap abilities turn, you know, are entirely removed or look different. You know, maybe units that have them like heal a certain amount of damage at the end of each phase or something. The card game now projects your model onto the table and plays the game for you in 10th edition. It's like a VR. It's an augmented reality game. I think there was a game like that, right? I remember that being advertised where you would buy like a deck of cards and you would put them on the table and then your phone would like project the little guy like moving around. You would have to look through your phone because it was an ARG, but it looked so clunky. Any game that requires you to play like not only with a phone, like that's one thing, but through a phone is like. So I can't like just set my phone down and play the game. I have to pick my phone up and look through it and then play the game with that. Ridiculous. Absolutely insane. How mortal wounds would be changed. Yeah, so I think what they said it sounds like, and I believe that they had a section on psychic phase in here. It sounds like psychic phase will be or psychic attacks will just be a regular attack. And I think maybe they talked about it in their most recent interview. Which was this one. So we can watch through this video. I think a lot of the
2 years working on Warhammer 40,000.
It's the most popular that 40k.
So loud, Stu, you're so loud.
Every data sheet in 40k.
There's must be hundreds of them.
Thousands, yeah.
I saw Stu Baker at Adepticon, by the way. I was busy, so I didn't go say hi, but otherwise I would have asked him.
There is a new edition of Warhammer 40,000 on the way. We're all super excited, and today, who better to
How do I think removing the psychic phase will affect units like zone thropes? The psychic phase is being removed, but psychic powers are not being removed. Psychic powers are now just abilities that are used at a particular time. They have like a particular timing. So zone throw, it's not like psychers will be removed from the game. They'll just operate like they did back in the day, where psychic powers were just a rule that you had. It will probably like require a roll, or hey, stop it, cat. It would probably require a roll, and it would probably, you know, there'll be some sort of like warp charge mechanic. It might just literally work the same way, where instead of being like you able to deny the witch in the psychic phase, you'll have a certain number of psychic phase denials and casts in a turn, and then those will reset every turn. But I can't tell you too much.
Then the head of the Warhammer 40,000 studio, Stu, how you doing, man? You're right.
Yeah, really good, thanks.
It's so good to be able to finally talk about it. How do you feel about this?
Oh yeah, very.
With the video editing, I think it's just because they wanted to make it like 5 minutes.
Talk to people about it.
Now we've talked quite a few times sitting in these very chairs.
This is probably like a 25-minute interview that they cut down to 5 minutes, and so they just cut every single pause that they could have out of it. I understand it, you know. That's what my shorts and stuff look like a lot of times. You see the timeline for one of my shorts videos, and it's like I've cut out like pauses between words and things just to get it under 60 seconds.
Yep.
About what the community has to say about gaming and that sort of thing. Overall, throughout the current edition, 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000, what has the community said to you about the game?
Loads of different things, you know. We've seen the event scene really kick off, like thousands and thousands of people playing all over the world. But there are some things that, you know, people think we can do better. The rules are kind of in loads of different places. It can be quite hard to keep track of where the rules for your army is. I think there's some things around what the most important rules are. So those are definitely some of the areas that we've really tried to kind of dig into and improve upon.
So how do you solve those problems?
We've tried to focus back on the data sheets themselves, make that the one-stop shop for most of the rules for your models. We've looked at the stat lines.
Freder, thanks for coming and hanging out. Do I think Battlescribe and Yellowscribe will work with 10th? Yeah, so Battlescribe and Yellowscribe are community-generated pieces of software. So, the Battlescribe itself is, Watches in the Dark just talking about ums in there. Now I'm thinking, all I can think about is saying on stream. Battlescribe is just a framework that basically adds point values in a data set up. The Battlescribe files for 40K are all generated by a team from the community, and so once the edition comes out, the Battlescribe team will just create new files for the 10th edition. Cat, I need you to calm down, okay? We're doing stuff.
We've put things like weapon skill and ballistic skill to hit rolls essentially onto the weapons, and that's given us a couple of tools that we can use to kind of really personalize those weapons to the unit that carries them. Stratagems, we've really kind of looked at the ones that have the most impact.
I love that idea, by the way. One thing that always bugs me, and it's part of... Ooh, there's my background music. Everybody gets to see that. It's part of the DNA of 40K, which is that 40K is basically a role-playing game. And Rogue Trader, the first edition of Warhammer 40,000, was just straight up a role-playing game. It had a GM. You role-played as like an army instead of as a character, and that was the only difference. Like, you had a game master. They had like scenarios that they would create for you, and terrain effects a lot of times were determined by the game master. Like, sometimes things like animals would ambush you from the jungle and stuff like that. And one of the ways that that's carried on in the DNA of the game is that weapons in the game are all this like bizarre equipment. It's not that you have an attack you can use. It's an equipment that's modified by your base like core stat line. And that frustrates me to no end because it means that a bolt gun in 40K can very rarely change its attributes. Which makes sense from a lore standpoint, right? Like, a bolt gun is a bolt gun is a bolt gun. It's always going to shoot a bolt round and whatever. But you want the guy, like, you want your Space Marine captain to be doing more damage because that guy costs you like 100 points. And if he doesn't have a good melee weapon, melee is the only way you get reasonable damage out of someone. He's never going to make his points back shooting at someone, and that sucks. It means like a ranged character archetype has to be ludicrous. You have to be a Kellermorph to be a good ranged character, and they added another arm to the Kellermorph so he could have 3 guns, and then they have to add a relic to him so he can have 3 damage, and then you have to add a special ability to him, and the gun's profile itself is like not that impressive. And so the fact that they're now divorcing weapon profiles from the unit carry, like from, excuse me, they're doing the wrong thing. I said it the wrong way around. They're marrying weapon profiles with the unit that's holding them, and I think that's so freaking cool. What if a heavy bolter carried by a Devastator is slightly more impactful than a heavy bolter on a land speeder? I don't know. They just have a different heavy bolter profile. You know what I mean? Like, not every heavy bolter is exactly the same. I think that'd be great.
Impact, and tried to make stratagems things that are either reactions that you can do in your opponent's phase, or kind of one-off cinematic things.
Stu, so we've got much less in the way of printed rules. We've got cards with our rules on. The data cards themselves are really simple. There's less flicking around between books. What was the idea behind all of that?
What are they planning to do with Forge World stuff? Oh, they'll for surely they'll wait a couple months or a couple weeks into the edition, and then they'll release like a card pack or an IAC for Forge World. It's just the same thing that they did with 9th. It sucks that Forge World's its own thing and they don't balance it with the Codex, because they made this whole spiel about assigning Forge World unit profiles to the design team. So they're like, it's the same team that does the Codex design now does Forge World design. Isn't that great? Now it means that Forge World's going to be good and playable. Except that then they just designed the Forge World, the Imperial Armor Compendium, and left it there for the rest of the edition. So like, you still have units. Yeah, as soon as a Codex would progress, it was just all their whole IAC list of models was just fucked. It was just worthless. And that sucks. I wish they would include them in codexes, or at least alongside codexes, but they're not going to do that. They're for sure just going to release a card pack and just say, fuck it.
Simplified the 40K experience. So it's still got a lot of depth, and a lot of decisions for you to make at the tabletop, but less decisions before the game.
Are they simplifying dice rolls or hit wounds? No. If we look at the data sheet, it looks like the attack sequence is going to be exactly the same. So all the rumors about the attack sequence changing dramatically were like totally overblown. One thing that they did say is that they're going to scale back the power level of attacks. So like one thing I think that's important to note here is that we have like flesh borers, right, which are the standard weapon for termagants, have lost their pip of AP. And I think what we'll see is that this AP bloat that 9th edition went through is probably going to get reversed, where most weapons in the game are going to be AP 0, like mid-weight weapons are going to be AP 1-ish, and then heavy weapons are going to be AP 3, maybe 4. But I don't think that we're going to see much better than that. Oh my god, this cat right now just feels super good. That's gross, cat. Why'd you do that? She just wants to be on stream. She wants the notoriety. Anyway.
There are big choices before the game about what kind of army you want to take, what rules you're going to use for that army. And once you make that decision, that unlocks like a spread of rules for you, and some stratagems and some enhancements that are specific to that one.
You had to really make that sort of top level decision first, and then
That's right.
after that's all decided for you.
Yeah, and so what that really does is it means that at the table when you're playing, you're not flicking through 30 odd stratagems going, hang on, I'm sure there's a cool one in here somewhere. We've all been there at that peak moment of the game where you're like,
No,
I think I can pull this
AP6
back.
railguns.
I
I mean,
can find
maybe.
the thing that
At that point, the difference between AP5 and AP6 is like very minor, right? It's like you shoot through a Terminator, a Storm Shield Armored Terminator, or you don't, is the only question. So they could still be AP6. The one-shot weapons, I have no problem with having super high AP. It's the ones where you have like you have a dude who is like with like a 4-shot 3-damage gun. It's like an exocrine, right? Like an exocrine cannon's AP4 3 damage, shoots 9 times, and you're like, do you need that? I don't know. Does this Leman Russ Executioner have to have like AP4 weapons stapled to every surface of its body? Probably not. You could cut the AP3 and nothing would would really change in the long run, but it would make the game more interesting because your opponent's actually rolling saves.
I think is here. So really kind of putting those up front so people find that easier to navigate.
Psychic powers is a big one. All the psychic powers are literally on the librarian's cards. There's no trying to find that section later in the book.
Yeah, and that leads
so that's
into
what it's talking about. Psychic powers, just like being abilities on the card. And I don't think that psychic powers. I doubt that they remove depth from psychic powers. Like there's suddenly no longer like this resource and bidding mechanic that we have. Not bidding. I don't want to say bidding. But bluffing mechanic with psychic powers, where there's a enormous benefit you can get from the correct sequencing of your psychic phase, where you put your important powers at the end, which means your opponent will have to make the decision to whether or not to use their denies, and then your important powers that they're trying to deny could fail or supercharge. Your opponent maybe loses denies. You have gotten like another 2% of efficiency out of your psychic phase. I think that stuff's great. Or from your psychic powers. I think those kind of interactions, not exactly that one, right? Because that's the current version of the psychic phase. I think those kind of interactions are still going to be important, but I don't think that the psychic powers themselves are going to be going away. Do I think they'll make Harry Dan relevant again? That's a great question. That's a wonderful question. I think that they're going to take another look at aircraft. So I think the units that are specifically aircraft are up in the air right now. I can't imagine that they retain all the aircraft rules from the previous sets of editions because they're like so toxic. If Harry Dan doesn't start on the board, I don't think he's that good. He has to start on the board in most matchups to be relevant. But I do think that they're going to take another crack at Forge World, and I do think Forge World in general is going to be more relevant. It just kind of depends on aircraft and whether he's aircraft and what aircraft look like, I think. That's a lot. But also, to be fair, they're removing a lot of synergy. So I think that these Death Star units that you focus fire your powers on, the reason Harry Dan was good in the 8th edition codex is you could dump 2 psychic powers, a synaptic link, and 4 stratagems on that guy, and he became this unstoppable monster. And that is no longer going to be the case. The game is going to be more focused on the phase to phase gameplay rather than this rather than this combo creation where you win in list building. And I think that's fine. I think that's great. It makes the smaller, like more interesting units, like more technical armies better, and I think that's a good direction for the game to go in. So honestly, it's up in the air. Harry Dan probably will never reach the level of brokenness that he did, or at least like the level of chicanery. I don't want to say Harry Dan was ever like overpowered broken, but he was very silly in the 8th edition Codex, and especially in Crusher Stampede.
The change that we've made. So we've simplified the turn structure. There is no psychic phase anymore, and what we've done is really kind of put those rules again on the data sheet.
Can we talk about how you still refuse to put a points cost on data sheets? I actually think in this situation that's actually good. If the data sheets themselves are a card that's sold in a card pack, putting a points cost on them would mean that Games Workshop, the design team or the dev team, the balance team, becomes beholden to that points value, and they become incredibly reticent to change the points value. If the points values are included in a Munitorum field manual document somewhere else on the internet, then suddenly they can update them with much more like liquidity, much more aggressively, and they don't have to have this like negative communities interaction where the community purchases these new cool cards they have, which then become outdated 2 weeks later. And I think that's awesome because it's a new edition. Every single data sheet's changing. There's gonna be stuff that's busted. There's gonna be stuff that's undercosted. There's gonna be rattling snipers where they cost 150 points a model, or a model they cost 50. What is it? 50 points a model for rather than 50 points a unit. Like that's gonna happen, and not printing those on a card like, just full stop, I think is actually is good and fine. I think it's okay. Not to be like a weird shill or anything, but like I do think that if the intention is to rebalance really with like a lot of agility, I think that not having the points values printed anywhere is like the way to go.
Particular abilities that he can do. Sometimes that might be a psychic weapon. Psychic powers aren't distributed evenly, so increasingly we've got factions that didn't really interact with the psychic phase, and that led to players having like a bit of a downtime. And one of the things we've really tried to do with the new edition is really cut down on that downtime.
I suppose redesigning
clip on points cost for the
data
cards. Yeah. What they should do is have like the cards be UV coated so you can dry erase on them, and then they just have a points section that's blank, and you like write in whatever the current points value is. Or it's like a QR code. No, a little QR code, and you scan it and it tells you how many points that is. Actually, that would be hype as hell. What if it was like what if it was a QR code on all of the cards, and when you scan it, it puts the unit into your army in the app, and it tells you like it brings up their data sheet and all of their points. Oh, that would be sick. I just designed myself a cool new list building system. If they say that that's like suddenly their new app, right? They made a big deal about how their app like actually works and isn't like hot total trash. What if that's what it does? That would be so cool.
in the entire game has been a great opportunity to go back and take a look at them again.
To be honest, it was one of the reasons why we made some of the really big changes, and we really kind of looked at everything and said, does this need to be here? Is there like a simpler, more elegant way that we can get that effect? So once we'd sorted the core rules out with that kind of methodology, we then went back and rewrote every data sheet in 40k, and then there's some universal special rules that we've put back into the game. So things like deep strike, feel no pain, some of those terms.
USRs, boys, we're getting them back. This is funny because I have as an aside, I have a follow-up to the phrases you need to know video, like recorded. And I think I have to re-record this with this in mind just to talk about 10th edition a little bit, because it sounds like a lot of these things are going to go from being like this parlance that the community knows to going back to being actual mechanics. And I think that's pretty fine. I hate feel no pain though. I hate that feel no pain is still in the game. That's such a bad rule for the mechanic. It's so stupid. Oh my God. Oh, it could just recognize the card. Poly principle. That's a good point. That would be so sick. Oh my God. That'd be awesome. Looks like Martina. Is this a good place to learn about Warhammer? Yeah, so right now, we are talking about some announcements for the new edition of the game that's coming out. So we're kind of looking at it from a standpoint of people who are already, have already been playing and what's the word? And we're talking about all of the new news. But if you have any questions about the game specifically, go ahead and throw them in the chat. People in the chat are going to be sweet. If I can answer, then I'll answer. And then we also have, if you go to the playlists, I think you can get it from ! How to play in the chat. That gets you to our new player tutorial series. And that actually has tutorials on how to play the current edition of 40K and a bunch of other like new player friendly information. So if you're looking for like more in-depth content about new player stuff, please go check that playlist out, because it is, I'm biased, but it's the greatest way to learn about 40K ever. And you should never look at any other videos about 40K like that.
I know, a decade, but still really familiar to players. And I think it really showed that having a common language for some of those rules was really important.
So one of the things I know we've heard from the community is the fact that the current edition of 140,000 got a bit bloated. There was so many rules and so many books and things people needed to take with them. How are we going to combat that in the future?
Internally within the studio, we have a really clear process for how we add new rules to the game. And then following on for that is that kind of detachment system where actually if we want to add a new detachment into the game, we can totally do that, but it will replace something. So what we've done in the new edition is, rather than putting those on top of your existing rules, they're instead of, we really wanted to try and make sure that what your unit looks like it does, it should do. And one of the things that had happened in the previous edition is that a combination of kind of particular warlord traits and relics and stratagems could sometimes boost a unit like beyond what you'd expect, which again kind of caught players off guard. And sometimes
it's interesting because I think that's like fine, actually. I think what they want to say is like, well, the combinations of relics, warlord traits, and stratagems could, like, the combinations could be overpowered. But Games Workshop has such an an anti-combo philosophy, and it's so weird. I think it's just because like combo play is harder for new people coming into the scene to understand and to like parse through. Like if you're unfamiliar with the system at all, and you show up against a new army and you look at your opponent's stat line, and then you're like, okay, well that's what their stat line is, and then like, well, also I have a bunch of effects that synergize really well with this unit. I understand that that's like annoying, but that's also like how like there's a community of people who very much enjoy finding combos in armies, and I think it's unfortunate that it sounds like the new edition won't really be for those people, and I think that's unfortunate. But I do understand that like there have been combos in the past that are just ludicrously overpowered, but so it is what it is. Yes, do you agree?
Those meant that they felt a little bit like somebody kind of gotcha'd them. So again, keeping those detachments really tight means that we can avoid those.
It's a really clever way of doing it.
Is a detachment an army of renown? No, a detachment is, in the current edition, this is different than the new edition. A detachment's like a list building component. It gives you a certain number of slots that you can put units into when you're constructing your list. An army of renown is an army list, so it's multiple detachments and a bunch of units. That has restrictions on the units that you can take, but gives you special abilities.
A thing that we've seen in the past, and it kind of would have felt like your knowledge of the rules was a weapon going into the game, and if you knew someone's codex better than they did, then you might have a better chance of them, and it seems like it's been taken away.
Yeah, very much so.
That's a little wild, because like just saying like over like honest like just going out and saying that like game knowledge is like shouldn't be a factor in winning is insane, because game knowledge is important in any game. I understand like you want to pull the focus from it, but if your opponent knows your codex better than you do, they should probably have an advantage. Like, are you serious?
Dude, it sounds like it's pretty much the best time to get into playing 140,000.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the changes we've made have really made that more straightforward for people. Once you want to know what faction you want to play, all you need is the core rules. You can download those. Your indexes are free. You can just download those as well. And those indexes will include your rules for your models, a detachment so to get you started. So those are all the things you need. I think if you're an experienced player, there's still loads of nuance and loads of depth in there. But actually, if you're relatively new to the game or just getting back into the game, it's much easier as like an on-ramp into it.
Of course, one of the other barriers we've seen is the number of miniatures required to play the game, but you've got a system in the new version of 140,000 that solves that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about Combat Patrol. So Combat Patrol has kind of been a size of game in the past that's a lot more accessible to people. And we've taken the opportunity in this edition to actually create that as a whole ecosystem. You can buy any of the Combat Patrols. They're all written to be balanced against each other. So you just pick one that you think looks cool, and you're good to go. So yeah, great, really accessible size game for newer players.
I'm gonna be honest, I must have tuned out the video when the first time I watched it in this part, because I totally don't even remember listening to this.
Also, if you just want to get a game done in an hour, like Combat Patrol is an amazing opportunity to do that.
Stu, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about the new edition of Warhammer 40,000. I bet you're as excited as we are to see it out there.
That Combat Patrol note's actually really sick. I wonder, man, maybe, I don't know. I don't know how you say, like, well, we've designed all of the combat patrols to be balanced against each other. And what that probably means is, like, we haven't included any insane units that are, like super broken and 500 points. But also, on the flip side, those rules are going to change for sure. One thing that's really funny is, like, you look at the divergence of, like, power level from points values in units, and it's like super hilarious right now, because you have a unit that was power leveled to be similar to its points value in and I mean power level like the resource, not power level like just how strong a unit is. You'll have a unit that's like similar to, or that has power level based on its original release at the start of 9th edition or even 8th edition, and then has been dramatically reduced in points value, and you'll see those two things diverge. So there's, like, for sure gonna be combat patrols where, like, units get get dropped in power or increased in points value, and give it like 6 months, and that format sounds totally broken. I love the idea of having, like, a format that's pre-constructed, so new people can go in and everyone can play their combat patrol, but there's no way that it's actually balanced. There's not a way in the world. All right, I think this is most of the stuff in the edition, right? Somebody's asking, like, why do it in this interview format? Because it's, like, snappy, whatever. It's easy to interface with. I don't think that the format of, like, an interview is really the problem there. And I think they have talking points, but I don't think they, like, scripted it. They for sure have outlined what the questions and answers are going to be, but I don't think it's rehearsed. Oh, it's going to have its own stat cards? Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong about that then. That's weird, though. If it's its own game, so you're like, this is the 40k, this is the introductory, like, version of 40k, but all the rules are different, so you don't actually, if you play a unit in Combat Patrol, you don't know what it is in 40k. Although, I'm going to be honest, though, like, that's an unfair criticism, because I think I would have criticized it either way. Games are, like, games don't scale. And people tell other people that their games scale, but they don't. That's just not how games work. Imagine, like, you can be like, oh, hey, Monopoly is designed for 4 players, but if you could play with 24 players and you just make the board 6 times as big, that game would be horrible. That game wouldn't play at all. And 40k is basically the same way, right? You can say, well, I'll play 500 points, but at 500 points, there are units that, like, are mathematically unkillable. And if you play 10,000 points, nothing in the game survives a single turn, because, like, the damage values in 40k are so front-loaded that whoever goes first is going to kill all of the important models on the other side of the table, and then you won't have the recourse to hit back hard enough. And so I think the game is always balanced for 2,000, and pairing it to, like, dramatically either direction is fun and interesting, but it's not actually balanced, and it's not intended to be played in that mode. And so I think that it's unfortunate from an onboarding standpoint that Combat Patrol would have its own set of rules, but I do think that it makes for a better experience at the low level. So I think either, there's, like, it's swings and roundabouts. There's positives and negatives either way, and I guess I prefer the fact that they would have new rules for a smaller version. The card with the Ripper Swarms is a Patrol Box card? Huh. That's a good point, actually. Could that be? Where's the Ripper Swarm card? I took a screenshot of it, or I grabbed a screenshot of it, but I don't know where it ended up. Let's see if I can grab it real quick for my video yesterday. Here it is. This is the Ripper Swarm card, by the way, chat. People were talking about. This was shown off in the video announcement for 10th edition, but it wasn't but it's different than the one that's on Warhammer Community right now. That's actually a really good point. It may literally just be a combat patrol card. I guess that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to give like reactive movement abilities when the table's so small, because you're then moving a greater proportion of the table. Like objective control is probably really interesting, but having like a Blade of Wounds in terms of a Ripper Swarm is actually sick. It does kind of speak to me that Ripper Swarms are still included in Termagant boxes, which makes no goddamn sense to me. I don't know, maybe. That's a good point, though. That would be cool. Boarding actions should be your introduction. Yeah, the difference is that boarding actions play so fundamentally differently than a base game system of 40k. And this is somebody who has played a little hypocritically. That's not a single game of boarding action. But I did talk about when it was announced how excited I was for it, and then I never played it. Now it's on Wahapedia, I might, though. But the difference is that boarding action requires a huge investment of terrain. It's basically Infinity, which Infinity is like, everyone talks about how cheap it is, and it's like Infinity is like, whoa, you could play with 12 models, and all the models are inexpensive. Yeah, except the terrain costs you $300, so it's actually not that expensive. It costs the same amount as 40k. And Boarding Patrol is basically the same. Boarding Patrol, like you buy, 15 models to be your Boarding Patrol, and then you buy $215 of terrain to build the Boarding Patrol scenery. That's like all of the missions require. So it's actually not that good as a first introduction. Combat Patrol is much better because Combat Patrol is not based around playing on a specific terrain set that's extremely expensive. What they want for Combat Patrol to do is to be like little 40k. Yeah, just a little small 40k that you can play on your kitchen table. And I think that's cool. You can have units that like do less damage and stuff than they would normally on a 2,000 point game. And I think that's great. Oh, what's the place with beginner videos? Let's see if the bot's on awake today. We'll find out if that works. Hopefully it goes. There it is. Boom! It did it. Thanks, bot. I'm glad that you decided to show up to work. There's our new player tutorial playlist. All the videos for new players. Get in there. Inky, please don't just stand on my table and threaten to knock things over. Okay, that'd be great. Give us Forge World Ripper models in plastic. Oh my god, the Forge World Rippers are so sick. I remember when I was a little baby boy, I had a friend who bought me a set of Forge World Rippers, which at the time was pretty impressive because like Forge World Rippers are expensive as hell. And those are one of my prized possessions. I love those things. They're so cool. Saw some comments about the reduced number of stratagems. Can't help but be super worried about the reduced number of stratagems. Yeah, I think the difference is that stratagems are integral to a faction's operation, and objectives are harder to like. Objectives are designed around in a whole ecosystem, right? So like it's easier to play test and mathematically balance the effect of transhuman physiology, right? An objective that, like a stratagem that affects a single unit in your army with a single ability, only is used when your opponent lets you use it, is used a limited number of times because it costs a finite resource, and only affects you for a limited time. Versus a secondary, which is much more complicated. It's like 7 or 8 different effects all bundled together, affects the entire army, and the effectiveness of that secondary can change depending on your list construction. So I think that the comparison between secondaries and stratagems is entirely fair. And I think the goal is going to be, and I'm using World Eaters as the example in my head about this. The goal is going to be to have every faction have 2 or 3 stratagems that are entirely integral to their game plan. So, for example, World Eaters has Fight on Death in the World Eaters subfaction, has Fight on Death for core units. And that is like basically that's so core to how World Eaters end up playing on the table that I think that that's how stratagems are going to function in the future. Yeah, each army will get a limited number, but that's because of subfactions. Now, this is one thing that I think I talked about. I didn't talk about it in my video. I have it scripted for another video, but I think that the subfactions being limited in the new edition is actually going to be, hopefully, I have a vision in my mind for a game that's actually incredible. Whether or not this gets delivered on, accurately, I have no idea. And it may just be that it still sucks. It's whatever. But assuming that subfactions are balanced to be competitive with one another, not necessarily like balanced across the entirety of the game, because you're basically talking about breaking every army into like 3 or 4 micro armies and then balancing all of those together, which is like 100 individual interactions, and you're never going to hit all of them. But if individual subfactions within your faction have different focuses, and all of those focuses are relatively competitive with the other options in the codex, then instead of, I think you have a limited list building creativity, and I think that's how it's going to work in the new edition. It's kind of like the idea that, like, because they've unlocked list building, which they talked about in the new edition thing. List building, it's a little bit ambiguous what they said about it, but it's basically just that you use rule of 3 and you need a character in your army, and then that's it. Where did they talk about it? Army selection. Pick a faction, pick a warlord, the units you like. More than 3 of any one type. Oh, they have an asterisk. Does that mean anything? Units with the battle line keyword can be taken up to 6 times. Okay, so you can take troops up to 6 of each troop, I guess. And stay within your points limit. So it's kind of the idea that, like, total freedom actually, like, ends up being kind of a prison, where because you're suddenly, like, you have freedom to take any combination of units in your faction, you end up only taking the most efficient ones, because you're not competing for elite slots or anything, right? But if you have 1 to 2 builds for each subfaction, but each subfaction itself has a very different focus on a different selection of units, and it buffs those exclusively, then suddenly you actually end up having more list diversity than you do in, like, 8th edition, right? So, like, if I'm playing Tyranids, right? Because I play Tyranids or whatever. And I build an army for High Fleet Behemoth versus High Fleet Kraken. The only difference between those two things is that, like, Behemoth, because it's a Lurk biomorphology subfaction, I might focus a little bit more on monsters. I might have an Exocrine and I might have a Carnifex. Whereas High Fleet Kraken, I might take more Raveners because they, or Hormagaunts or whatever. I want to take the faster stuff to compound the speed. But 99% of my list looks exactly the same. If subfactions work how I hope they do in 10th edition, where I play High Fleet Behemoth and it focuses exclusively on monsters and it makes monsters extremely good and all I want to play is Monster Mash, versus playing High Fleet like, Kraken or Hydra or something, where those focuses are on fast horde units exclusively, suddenly I have 2 bifurcated lists instead of just 2 versions of the same list. And I hope that ends up being the case, because the diversity of the game would actually be super sick. And with each of those subfactions having its own unique set of stratagems, there's probably going to be some overlap, but the amount of optionality in the game is actually going to increase, hypothetically. I mean, who knows? Like, honestly, like, it could be unbalanced as hell and none of that could matter. But I'm hoping, I'm choosing to remain positive and hoping that that's what the game looks like, because I think it's going to be awesome. Have they said anything about board size? They haven't, no. I could not imagine that they would change it again. The amount of, like, changing it one time was fine, because they were like, we want the game to be smaller, we want the game to play faster, so we're gonna reduce the recommended board size. And, like, okay, I get it, but if they went back to the original board size, for example, and events had bought hundreds of mats in the current size, and players had bought, you know, terrain and mats and layouts based on the current size of game, and they change it back, I could not imagine the loss of community goodwill. That would be disastrous. Disastrous. People would straight up quit the game over that. I do not imagine that they're going to change it. If AOS different HQs can change the battle line. Oh, that's a great point. Necromancer Goblin. Absolutely. They could be like, if you play in Iron Hands, you can take like Redemptors and box dreadnoughts as battle line. If you play Ultramarines, you get veteran squads as battle line. If you play Imperial Fists, you get Devastator squads with heavy bolters as battle line, or like something like that, right? At Valdor, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Every High Fleet Behemoth list is identical, but you don't have to play High Fleet Behemoth. Right now, if you play Tyranids, you have like 2 list builds that you know. Oh, I guess Tyranids is a bad example because they're dog shit, so none of their builds are good. Let's say you play Astra Militarum right now, Valdor. Every single Astra Militarum list is identical. It's exactly the friggin' same, right? But if you had it so that they had 3 subfactions, each of which focused on a different unit type almost exclusively, and all of which were within 5% of each other in terms of power level, that's the pipe dream. That's where the things go wild, right? One subfaction ends up being the best. But I'm hoping that at least for the first couple of weeks, we'll be in a grace period where nobody knows what's good, and so every faction will be played equally. But if you have the tank army and the infantry army and the Khazarkin army, or the Tempesta Scion army or whatever, and all of them play differently and all of them have different lists, suddenly instead of having 1 list, you have 3 lists. So despite the fact that your list building is more restrictive, you actually have more diversity because the buffs that you give to those individual units are tweaked harder. Logan Grimnar used to make Wolfguard troops. Logan Grimnar. Oh, Logan Grimnar, you silly goose. Always, always throwing a wrench in the works. Astra Militarum lists that deviate from the list I'm describing win more. I don't think that that's true at all. I think Astra Militarum lists that deviate from the list I'm describing might go 3-2 more often, but I don't think they win more GTs. I bet if we took a look at every single Astra Militarum list that won a GT like in the last 2 weeks, I bet that they would all be within 400 points of each other. But I'm not going to do that because it's boring. Somebody look into that. Somebody corrects me on that. I bet that they all start with 3 units of Khazarkin. I bet they're all like Lord Solar Leontis, Ursula Creed, 3 units of 3 mortars, 3 units of Khazarkin, 3 Leman Russ, like 0 to 1 tank commanders, and 4 Cadian shock trooper squads, and the command squad with the finial that has the Ogryn bodyguard attached. I bet that 90% of those lists have all of those models in it. I am hoping that isn't the case. Yes, for sure. And I think it's easier if I'm hoping that the subfactions are relatively competitive with one another, which is my conceit right now. I think that is going to be the toughest thing, and I think that it will require like constant rebalancing to make sure it ends up being the case. But even if it is enough of a gap that you can overcome it with player skill, people are gonna be able to be successful with like wildly different lists, and I'm hoping that ends up being happening. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Esmeralda Tarim. Esmeralda Tarim's stupid and broken. I guess that's my fault. I use them as a I use them as an example. That's on me. Fair enough. All right. Have there been... Oh, so there was an article today, which I don't think we talked about too much. What does the new game mean for books? We did talk about it, where books are being entirely rebalanced, which is good. Now, it does... I mean, it sounds like they're going to be coming out with the card packs for new books, right? I hope they stick with that, but I mean the codex. There's no way they're changing the codex model. It's like too ingrained in the bones of 40k right now. Even though it's the source of every single problem that the game has, essentially. World Eaters only have 2 sub-factions, though. I think the idea is that you're going to get more sub-factions. Like, World Eaters currently have 2 lists. They have the list with Angron and they have the list without Angron. But if they had 2 more, suddenly they'd have 4. And I think the World Eaters lists are like relatively competitive with one another, I think. The Angron lists don't do quite as well. But that's, you know, I don't think that they're like substantially, at least anecdotally, it doesn't seem like they're substantially less powerful. If every codex, I'm willing to eat my words if every codex in the game has 2 sub-factions. And I hope that that's not the case. I hope each codex has 4 to 6. Which would be harder to balance, but give us more of a, like, give each faction more interesting list archetypes. It will definitely take some time. Yeah, there's gonna be some growing pains for sure. There always is growing pains. So like there's gonna be one ability that's like super busted that they forget about. I mean, the 9th edition was the same way. Like Space Wolf land speeders had objective secured, like at the start of 9th edition. It was so stupid, you know. And there's gonna be abilities like that. It's just gonna happen. We're gonna have 3 months of like fixing all the dumb, like, stupid idiot typos that they made. And then we're gonna have 3 more months where they fix the mission structure, and then we're gonna get to the point where the game is relatively good. But I hope at that point that it ends up being solid. Four or 6 sub-factions that each are essentially worth. I mean, World Eaters is a bad example, right? World Eaters is a bad example because they have like 6 units, right? If you look at World Eaters and you look at Leagues of Votann, you're like, oh, what? There's no list diversity in this faction. What the hell? Yeah, because they don't have any units in their army. But if you look at Space Marines, and if they can make Space Marine, every archetype of Space Marine unit like independently strong, suddenly Space Marines have insane diversity. Like it's crazy. If you have like, oh well, Biker Landspeeder Space Marines is pretty good. Devastator Space Marines is solid. Big Tank Space Marines is okay. Dreadnought Space Marines is okay. Terminator Space Marines is another one. I play only Tactical Squad Space Marines, only Phobos Space Marines, right? Like, just because the faction that only has 8-bound in it doesn't have a lot of list diversity, I don't think is necessarily you know, an indictment of the system. We'll see. We'll just have to see. yeah, Harlequin's another good example. And maybe those are the factions that only have 2 sub-factions in them. I don't think that's going to change, but I think the factions that have a wide variety of units, like the legacy factions that already have a bunch of stuff, if they can make that, if they can take those units and compartmentalize them into factions that are all relatively competitive with one another, instead of trying to make the faction as a whole holistically competitive, I think that's you're going to end up seeing more units. Your list construction is going to be boring and stupid, but at least like when you get to a tournament, you know, you pair against I don't know, you pair against Craftworld Eldar, there's like a pretty wide variety of different kinds of Craftworld Eldar that you'll see. That's my hope. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for. And I think there's the potential of that. We did talk about it earlier, where we talked about the fact that their mechanical game design is not that exciting, but what they have been getting much better at doing is balancing things. And I hope that we see that kind of carried over to the new edition. That the comparative balancing sort of remains relatively in the same ballpark. Because you can kind of, especially at like a 5-round GT or like RTT to 5-round GT level, you can kind of just take whatever you want and play and win with it. We're seeing like Necrons win. We're seeing Leagues of Votann win. Knights are a little sad right now, but that's like an outlier, and like Tyranids, I guess. But like a lot of the other factions are doing relatively well, and that's really cool. Hoping for an Inquisition faction. Yeah, I guess it is an open question how like Agents of the Imperium will work. I imagine that they won't change significantly, to be honest. Now they did talk about data cards being obsolete, but I imagine that. Yeah, so data sheets for every unit in the game will be free to download. But it looks like, I guess they won't have stratagem cards. Is that what I'm reading here? And I'm not sure what this, what the stratagem card here is. These backs must be for the different. Yeah, this is the Space Marine symbol, right? So this is the Space Marine deck. The backs must be the different types of stratagems. This must be the old stratagems, and they just like show a product image of a product they're not going to sell anymore. It's weird. But I think with the idea that you can keep your entire subfaction rules on a single page, you'll just have your stratagems in front of you instead of having cards of them. It feels weird that they wouldn't include them with the data, the profile cards, right? Like I don't know. It feels like you should be able to buy a faction deck that has every card instead of just the profile cards. But I don't know. Yeah, my Games Workshop, my stratagem cards, like I use them to line cards, like when I print them out. I think I have a bunch that are like lining proxy magic cards right now. For my old stratagem decks. Those things are worthless. Yeah, you never buy the cards for sure. I like the idea of the datasheet cards, but I don't know if they're worth like paying for. But I guess you just print them and you like laminate them or whatever, and that's probably the way to go. Wouldn't be surprised if Ultramarine, Space Marines, Ultramarines and Space Wolves get 2 subfactions each. Can see Imperial Fists working with 1 if it's on brand and strong. Yeah, that's kind of how I'm envisioning it. But it sounded like, and somebody can point me to where they said this, but they talked about having a like a first company Ultramarines focused subfaction. Which, I mean, it sounds like that's the focus of the narrative, so it makes total sense. But it means that there's an opening for instead of releasing armies of renown, for them to release sub-factions for the armies that they want to focus on. Which means that instead of overlaying your rules on top of existing rules and just making your army of renown significantly better than or sub-faction supplement significantly better than every other build within that faction, they can separate it out and it can be its own thing. And I think that's really cool. And it speaks to the fact that there may be new what am I trying to say? There may be like more of a divergence within each faction. Like if all of the Space Marine supplements have 2 sub-factions per supplement, suddenly Space Marines are like 20 different armies. And that's kind of sweet. A Termagant card is empty space, but it's a Termagant. Like, it's a 5-point infantry model. If the Termagant had enough abilities to fill up this card, I would be worried about the state of the game. That would be That would be objectively not great. That would be so bad. If this is like so that they can stack up in a deck with character cards who have 3 different special abilities and 6 different weapons and a like a cool psychic power. You know what I'm saying? Your basic idiot infantry should not have enough abilities to fill the whole card up. Every time a new model comes out, they'll publish a subfact that has busted rules to support it. Yeah, potentially. I could see that. I do wish they would like expand the font size, I guess, but whatever. I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. Can we get rid of Firstborn, please? Well, these new Terminators sure do have Primaris guys inside, so maybe. Either this means that Firstborn stay forever, or all Space Marines become Space Marines. I think they're too far down the rabbit hole, though. Like, you can't... I don't know. You can't differentiate... At this stage, I don't feel like you could differentiate a tactical squad from an intercessor squad. Or be like... all tactical squads are now intercessor squads, and they have the same profiles now, or something. And have that be like... Have that work in a seamless way. They should do it, but... I don't know. These resculpts are sweet, by the way, though. These look good. Somebody just posted a pic of a 40k 4 mini box called the Lion's Guard. That's cool. See if I can find it. I don't know, everybody. Somebody post a link. I'm not going to look for it on stream. That's a waste of everyone's time. Post link. New Tactical Marines? Ooh, that would be... Honestly, like, that's the way to go, though, right? You make new Tactical Marines that are scaled, or, like, not scaled in line with Primaris, but that are just, like... compatible with intercessor rules, and then you just make an intercessor squad, and that's the only troops option you can have. Honestly, like, as much as it's like a staple of the background that tactical squads are very tactical and flexible, just get rid of their special weapons. Your sergeant can have a cool thing, but like the rest of the unit, it doesn't matter what they have. They just have bolt guns. Because I think like that's what's holding. I don't know. No, those units are never good in 40k. The units that have a single special weapon in them, and it means that they are like artificially divorced from intercessors. If you just made it so it was 10 Space Marines with bolt guns, and they had the same profile regardless of which 10 Space Marines they were, then I think that would be that's the platonic ideal. But because tactical squads have this like weird special heavy weapon to like sergeant mix, they have to be different artificially. It's kind of annoying. Somebody send it to my Discord. Oh no, my Discord's not open. Oh, it's just a box. I want miniatures. Somebody show me miniatures. Okay. That's not that. That's okay, I guess. Thanks for sending me the picture. No one bought the new Orc Boys. Yeah, I mean, some people did. I've seen them. But I'm saying that, like, I don't even think you should make it a like I don't think it even matters whether at this, especially at this stage, it doesn't matter whether or not it's a separate kit, right? Because everyone has 10 Space Marines. you know what I'm saying? Like, I think the people who are Space Marine players are not gonna struggle to put 10 bolter armed Space Marines together in a unit. They're gonna be mad that their their cool multi-melty guy has to have a bolter now, but like, it's not like, oh no, I'm so gimped because my tactical squad can no longer have 2 melta guns in it or whatever. And how will I ever make tactical squads again? I don't know. Rebased my old boys? Yeah, I'm staring down the barrel of a base update on Tyranids, which is not, this doesn't feel great, but it is what it is. Yeah, the old Marines look really bad for sure. For sure. Oh, back of the box is on? Oh, sweet. Let's take a look. So this must be how Lionel Johnson's being packaged. Ooh. Those are just Blade Guard veterans, right? Are they pointing their swords? Do Blade Guard veterans not do that normally? Is that the difference? Let's look. I guess I don't think they do. I think those are unique Blade Guard veterans. But they don't have any unique iconography. Oh, they have a shield on the back. That's cool. I like the shield on the back. I think I was just commenting on somebody's they did like a Blade Guard champion for, oh no, these are literally just Blade Guard veterans. Okay, actually, yeah, no, that's the same guy. It's the same picture meme. Oh, okay. So they're just upselling you for Blade Guard veterans if you want to get the Lionel Johnson. That's annoying. I guess I take back all of the cool things I said about that guy's dude with the shield in the back. I didn't realize Blade Guard veterans had a shield that went on their back. I thought they were all just the guys with the swords. That's interesting. I'm learning something new every day. I don't think I've ever seen someone not put the shield on their Blade Guard veteran. Huh. Yeah. Wild. So they were like, hey guys, how do we sell Lionel Johnson? Everyone is going to want Lionel Johnson. Everyone who's an Imperium player is going to want this guy. How do we get an extra $50 from them? And the answer is you put like 3 useless Blade Guard in his kit. Poopy. They come in a new color. But hear me out. You can paint these ones cream. What is it with bases always getting larger? I think it's fine. The bases are, I mean, as someone who's a huge proponent of like, you know, bases being gospel within a miniatures game, I think that the bases should be large enough to be impactful without having your models overhang. And I think if they slowly increase base sizes to the point that the models don't have significant overhang, suddenly they'd be like, hey, by the way, your model doesn't count for movement anymore. Because there's like very rarely a situation in which it like bumps into something when you're moving it or whatever. No wonder Big Adventures are sold out. They're saving them for the box set. Yeah. That might literally be the case. Also, Blade Guard, I mean, unironically, Blade Guard veterans are a very cool kit. Yeah, the larger bases do look better for sure. It's definitely like it's a knock-on effect of the industry moving from a 25mm to a 30mm standard. Like you'll find that most games now use 30mm bases on all of their base infantry models. I think War Machine did sort of like showed everyone the power of larger base sizes. Because that game dropped and everything was on a lipped base. I have some lipped bases right here. Look at these little friends. And everything was on a lipped base that was large and had space where you could like model out the base and didn't really crowd the model. Whereas 40K, like your base infantry, you couldn't do anything with their bases. You put a rock on it and call it a day, basically. So everything being 32 to 40 millimeter in the new edition, I think, just makes it so your models have more of a framework. I think that it looks good. Imagine something like a Toxicrin based. just remove those tentacles from the Toxicrin. Just squat Toxicrins, and then we don't have to deal with it. Squat this like annoying, stupid, bad model that's never been good. Yeah, base to base LOS for sure, which I'm really hoping for. Model to model LOS is just so bad. Yeah. Well, thanks for sending me these pictures, everybody. I did not realize that they had that had been announced. All right. Do we have any more 10th edition stuff to talk about? Lionel Johnson's here, but I don't think they don't talk about his rules probably. Everyone's seen this guy, right? Like, I don't think that's pretty hugely breaking news. What? The Lions returned? The thing that every rumor channel has been predicting for the last 7 years has happened? Incredible. Literally unthinkable. The like the model who could most easily be reintegrated into the 40K universe in the lore is finally, they're doing it. Wow, what a time. The fury of the Emperor himself resounds from his shield. Does he have like a shield attack? That's cool. It'd be cool if Lionel Johnson shield bashed people. Punk. Lion Lannister? Yeah. Yeah, I know he I saw all the comments that he looks like Tyrion Lannister. It definitely looks like that's that's for sure an inspiration, which I think is fine. What's that actor's name? I feel bad because I really like him and stuff. Or Tywin Lannister, excuse me. Not Tyrion. Showing how stupid I am. Charles Dance, of course. Just have to look him up. Charles Dance. Look at these two men together. This is the same person. It's like actually this. That is actually a striking resemblance. It's very similar. That's good stuff. People were predicting Space Hulk. I did see that. Well, because they posted on Instagram. I saw that meme. They posted on Instagram that like using a pun about Space Hulk, they were like, we have space for something hulking into the like announcements today or something, and everyone's like, oh, it's actually Space Hulk. But there was no Gene Stealers in that announcement. I saw through their chicanery. I see what's up. Melee gargoyles? That would be sick. It's interesting that, yeah, melee gargoyles would be really strong, too. Because they have, like, high base movement speed stuff. That's good in melee is good. It's always weird when that stuff is like, I move 12 fly, and I have a single shot, strength 5, like, ranged attack. And you're like, okay. Why do you fly, then? You don't need that. A little silly. Helmet with the hood is good. There is the one, yeah. There is the one where, the meme that has the helmet with the hood, but the helmet has the wings, and it's just huge bunny ears. That's killed me. I'll never unsee it. But the helmet with the hood is really, really cool looking. No, it's just a sick model. Just big, cool knight guy. Like, not much else to say about that. For sure. Shrike's coming back? Shrikes would be sick. Tyranid Shrikes right now? Oh my god. Give me some High Fleet Crack and Tyranid Shrikes. Let me move 20 inches in a charge. I mean, it's a Ravener, but it flies. Let's go. All right. Well, I think that we have basically talked about everything, right? The new website that they have does not have any information on it, right? Your questions answered. I would love to go there. Universal special rules are better back in the game. Deep strike they talk about. That's good. Core stratagems are much more reactive. Core stratagems are much more reactive. What does that mean? Core stratagems are much more reactive. How would you make core stratagems more reactive? Does that mean you have like what if they had like shooting interrupts? What if they had like a shoot on death for any unit? Because it's different. Like, I mean, I'm reading too far into an article, but the fact that they distinguish stratagems from core stratagems is very very interesting to me. Because you could say, oh, stratagems are more reactive, and you're like, okay, sure. Like, more factions have a transhuman physiology. I get it. But talking about that specifically in regards to the stratagems that every army has access to is really bizarre. It's not a Flyrant in the video? What? That's like for sure a Flyrant, right, chat? In the Warhammer announcement video? We're gonna frame by frame this thing, everybody.
Will not save.
That was for sure a flying hive tyrant. That's what I saw. It looked a little bit different, but it looks like the general like aesthetic of Tyranids is changing a little bit. They have this like it felt like a little bit of an art style change. This guy. Does this show up good on the stream? Not really at all. Okay, we're going back to theater mode here. This guy. It has like 2 horns. What is that second horn? Like this stuff. Is that different? That's the only really like physiological difference that I can see. Maybe they just have a new tyrant model that has spikes in the back. Yeah, so it doesn't have the smoke chimneys. And it has 1 layer of spikes. And it has... Are those bone swords? Those look like bone swords, right? Yeah, it's for sure bone swords. Okay, I'll buy it. Honestly, it looks like it could be an artistic interpretation, but I guess it's like in the announcement trailers, Games Workshop doesn't really do that. So yeah, maybe it's a new Hive Tyrant sculpt. Honestly, that's what I would assume it was. Yeah. So it doesn't have 2 rows of vents. Body is the same size as a Terminator. I mean, scale is meaningless in 40k. Like a rhino in 40k is like 10 times the size as the model is. Like I wouldn't read too far into the scale. But it also has current Hive Tyrant doesn't have feet that it can stay on the ground with. It has to stay in the air because its feet are big spikes. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit different. Look when it stabs the guy. Oh, those are Scything Talons. That's weird. Why does it... I guess that says that... I mean, Scything Talons already exist places. How does it switch them if it moves them around, I guess? Because there it looks like it's holding them out like this, and in which case they're curved. They look like curved bone swords. But if they're Scything Talons and they go the other direction, then I guess it's like it's got them out. It's got them like outwards, like all the way out. Ugh. I don't know. That looks awkward. Its arms are all twisty. Yeah. Rawr. It's like a Malikia. It's a cool helmet. It's a cool head though. It's got like this crest. The crest is like really big. Is this what was in the announcement image? Because that also has that really like enhanced sort of facial structure. The image is right here. I'm in trouble looking at it. It's like this thing that I have a little bit off screen, basically. I guess it's not exactly the same, but it's close. And it's got little mandibles. I love these. Whatever it is, I like the design. One thing that's really interesting is that, and I noticed this when the trailer first dropped, is that you can see these like striations in the carapace. And that is right along the lines of the Prime from the Space Marine 2 trailer. Like they've unified that aesthetic really well. Very intentionally. And I think that's great. I think that's very cool. Oh yeah, the Screamer Killer has funky Scything Talons too, right? I love that they went back to like an old... Well, I kind of like that they go back to the old Screamer Killer aesthetic. Where it's like this big, bald, like weird thing. With the talons that face inward instead of facing down. This little guy right here, this little friendo. But I also kind of... I don't know. I also don't super love the OG Screamer Killers. I think it's cool from like a nostalgia standpoint. It's like, oh, cool. They're like paying homage to this old model. But also the old model looked like shit. So now you're going to have a new model that also kind of looks like shit. So like, I don't know. I don't know if I love it. I like it when Tyranids have like the distinct head crests like Carnifexes do. And this one's just a little baldy. Like the OG Screamer Killer was. Look at this. Look at his big bald head. He's like a big gene stealer. He's a big dumb gene stealer. They really like pushing into this like big wide mutton chop kind of look though. They're bigger Gants also with a different head. It was extremely fast-paced, but I think that was partially because it was like they were trying to like introduce all the new stuff, right? Because there's like this thing, right? What the fuck is this? It's like a lictor with 4 arms. Like what? Yeah, there were these things too, which are like, I guess these are supposed to be biovores. It looks like it's shooting a well, it looks like a rupture cannon though. So maybe it's an anti-tank gun. Do they blow up the dreadnought? So they... Oh yeah, and was this what you're saying, Chad, about the Gant? Because there's like a Gant and then there's this guy. I guess that conceivably could be another Gant. It's hard to tell. Oh, these are like little spiny. These are Hormagaunts. Hormagaunts are skinnier anyway, so that's probably what happened there. And then these guys shoot pew pew pew. Oh, they shoot plasma for sure. Oh, they do blow up the. They do blow up the dreadnought. Good fuck dreadnought. And then the Hormagaunts jump on it. So those might be rupture cannons. New biovores definitely wouldn't be shooting a dreadnought to death for sure. Oh, maybe it's a Biovore, but it has an anti-tank gun. That would be sick, actually. That would be sick because I have a bunch of Biovores that are old enough that I could use them as either, and I wouldn't worry about it. Base to base line of sight is both Chad and based. And based. Oh, who's he fight? Who's he fighting in this one? Is he fighting that Lictor? Oh yeah. Ooh. Yeah. So what the fuck is this? Is this a warrior? It's got a big spike on its head. Maybe that's the Lictor. That must be the Lictor. But it has like, yeah. So that's in feeder tendrils. It's got a second set of arms that are bigger than the. Oh yeah. It doesn't have claws. It has talons. Yeah. How thoroughly would this be double checked for total accuracy? Extremely thoroughly. 100% they would double check every single frame of this. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if like the models that they would for sure have the 3D sculpts for the new models, and then they would base the models for the trailer off of those. There's no way that they would have a model that's like dramatically different. If you look at like the 9th edition release trailer, like the Blade Guard Veteran Sergeant was identical to the Blade Guard Veteran Sergeant that came out in the Indomitus box. Like he had the little skull on his thing, he had the same little like he had the skeleton on his shield, he had the same little like accoutrements on his belt, all the Scorpex stuff was identical. Like there's no way that they just suddenly like throw that away. It's based on the 2nd edition Lictor. Man, if they just like, if the whole idea is that they throw out like the 3rd edition Tyrannid range redesign, I'm going to be kind of mad. Because that is the only reason I played Tyrannids. Oh, he killed that guy? What? I didn't even realize that. That was like the captain guy who's been on throughout the whole video. Oh no, that's just a regular idiot. Just kidding, it's an intercessor. I thought that was the dude with the combi flamer. Okay, get wrecked. Absolutely destroyed. This is Captain Guy. Way to go, Captain Guy. I think I said it in the Discord when this trailer came out, but the Captain Guy in this feels like an RPG character created by one of the game designers or something. He just has like, he's like, what if he had like a big bolt, like a bolt rifle? It was like big and it was mastercrafted, and he was like a cool Phobos guy. So he was like a sneaky guy, and then he also had a flamethrower, and then he was the best fighter ever. He had 2 swords. What if he had 2 swords also? He's like a min-maxed like character in an RPG session. Get out of here, Captain Guy. Yeah, Pyroblaster guy, get wrecked. Is that a combi flamer or a combi melta? That's for sure a combi melta. Look at that. Good stuff. The old Primaris combi melta. Hopefully we get Stern Guard veteran squads, because this is a Stern Guard squad, right? But it's a Primaris squad. Hopefully we get Stern Guard veteran squads that you can just use either Firstborn or what's the word? Or the Primaris guys. All the cool new Terminators. Blam, 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 blam. So these are for sure new Hormagaunts, right? Or something similar, because these are the same thing that we saw previously in the last shot where the Biovores were. They were in front of the Biovores. And they've got the 2 little scything talons in the big head. Rah, rah. Imagine being the dude painting yellow warning stripes into the teleport hammer. Yeah. Should we imagine being the servitor who has to do that? Yeah, go get him, librarian. So these are like weird toxicrines, right? These are very big. These are like for 60 mil base, probably. I bet they're like an alternate pyrovore or something similar. I guess not they couldn't be a pyrovore, but I bet they're similar. I mean, they could, yeah, they're for sure, they're new something for sure. But they're like a little fast guy that has 2 Scything Talons. Right? Because they have Scything Talons? Pretty sure you see them have Scything Talons. They stabbed that guy at one point, right? Rah, yeah, that guy absolutely has Scything Talons. So it would be like, maybe it's like a Swarmagaunt or something, and it's a Hormagaunt but different. But I wouldn't. At least it's the same. It fulfills the same function as a Hormagaunt. You know what I'm saying, chat? And if it's not a resculpted Hormagaunt, it's a new thing. At least it's basically the same as a Hormagaunt. It'd be cool if they had a homing beacon as an objective marker. That homing beacon is different, but the Terminator kit currently comes with a homing beacon model. It's like a little light on a post. These are very different than the current Hormagaunts, but they still are a little infantry with 2 Scything Talons, so whatever. And then here's this guy that we've talked way too much about. I wonder how big the Hive Tyrant's head is as compared to the Terminator's head, if you want to look at scale really, like hardcore. Because that is the scale difference. There's the G-Man. Everybody gets killed by the whatever this fucking thing is. I love this. I love this guy. Looks like he's got little helpers. Maybe he like arcs psychic powers through them. Maybe they're arc nodes from War Machine. Blap. He's like, I'm trying to deny the witch. Nope, can actually fuck. Take D3 mortal wounds. Dead. Got him. Oh, there's a really good picture of the little Hormagaunt thing. That's for sure a Hormagaunt, right, chat? There's no way that's not a Hormagaunt. I would be so shocked. It's a Hormagaunt, but it's got back spines on it. That's the difference. But it's got like the big long legs. It's got the little tiny talons too. That's a Norn Queen? That's definitely not a Norn Queen. I think they called it the rumors called it like a Norn Maleceptrix, right? Is that what they said? Zorp. Oh. Sorry. Zorp. Get wrecked. Give me a good shot of him. I guess over here. It's just a big Maleceptor, but it flies, probably. God, stop it. Oh, this is the Psyker killing all the Venom Thrope bugs. That's sad. Poor Venom Thrope bugs. They just wanted to eat people. Maleceptrix was the name that I heard. Dominatrix is another thing in the lore. If they totally redesigned the Dominatrixes, that would surprise me. Oh, it's like the Silent King. That makes sense, yeah. Because it has 2 little friendly boys to take wounds for it. Maleceptors do not fly, chat. They have legs. They wander around. But they got the same. They have the same crown thing with the spikes off of it. Theirs is just like across their carapace, basically. Pew, 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 pew. Oh, yeah, here it comes. Oh, y'all are about to get fucked right on your bums by all the tentacles. Take that, Captain Guy. Gonna get smited. Pew, pew, mind bullets. What did make the dinosaurs extinct? Me. Pew, pew. It would be interesting if it was the Doom of Malantai. It was weird that they made the Parasite of Mortrax like its own thing. They were like, well, the Parasite of Mortrax goes from being a character to just being a type of unit, but it kind of unlocks them to name units after things that type of unit has done, right? So you could have a Doom of Malantai be a big Psyker bug. You know, you could have a, I don't know, you know, like Terrorizer of Macragge be some sort of woolly mammoth bug. I don't know. So I wouldn't be too surprised if it ends up being the Doom of Malantai. A Paliceptor? Oh, that's what I'm going to call it. That's a good name. 2++. Red Terror is weird because, like, I don't know. Red Terror is a weird name for something, but whatever. That's a lieutenant? That's a lieutenant with the big gold shoulder pad? No way. No way that's a lieutenant. That's gotta be a captain man, right? Right? His whole shoulder pad's gold. Do they like, do you get a clear shot of like his uniform? Can you see if he has like lieutenant stuff on him? It says Gilliman on his shoulder. Oh no, that's Gilliman itself. That would be weird if it said Gilliman. They should have called Malak Red Terror. I think Malak's fine though. I think it'd be okay. Captain guy, show me your shoulder pads. I want to see what rank you are. Captains have 4 head studs and are called Lias Isidon. What if he? What if he? Yeah, he's just like randomly olive green and also a raptor. Oh yeah, excuse me. It's a lieutenant, of course. If you're gonna call something a lieutenant, you should spell it that way. You know what I'm saying? That's all I ask. Go get him. Go get him, Captain Guy. Doing all the stabbing. He's doing the slamming and slashing. That's hard to see. I don't know. The existing Phobos captain does not have an Iron Halo either, right? Am I wrong about that? I believe that that's the case, but now I'm second guessing myself. I'm gonna look it up. Captain in Phobos armor. Oh, he does have an Iron Halo. Shit. Just kidding. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's in his shoulder pad. There you go. That would do it. Maybe he's like a specialist guy. Maybe he's not even either. Maybe he's like a chapter champion. What does the existing Phobos captain look like? I think I got confused because he also has Omni Scramblers. I thought he replaces Omni Scramblers. Oh, yeah, no, he doesn't have an Iron Halo. Get wrecked, chat. I was right the whole time. I should never second guess myself. I'm always right about everything, and I've never said anything wrong in my life. Get out of here. Why does he have the Iron Halo ability? He doesn't have one. That's weird. I guess it doesn't really matter. Get out of here. Look at those Omni Scramblers. Yeah, so, see, there's precedent for having a captain that doesn't have the Halo on his back. The captain has a cape, but he doesn't have quite as impressive shoulder pads. Not all captains have capes, right? I'm sure that we can find some examples of captains that do not have capes. A Grey Knight guy. There you go, a Grey Knight. These ones do. This one has a very small cape. And really, that's a camo cloak. It's not actually a cape. GW didn't clarify the spelling. They clarified the pronunciation. Lieutenant in the 41st Millennium is called a lieutenant, which is annoying and stupid. What do we think the chance of a new Carnifex is? 100%, because they showed one in the video. Yeah, the Primaris ones do have capes. That's true. And the firstborn ones do have the option to have capes. So the firstborn ones you could have not a cape if you wanted. But for a Phobos guy, if any Space Marine captain, hear me out, chat. If any Space Marine captain were to not have a cape, it would be the Phobos one, right? You know what I'm saying? So, there you go. Yeah, I guess it could be like, he could be like a special Ultramarine guy, maybe. I don't know. He's probably a special character. Oh, I guess he's probably not a special character, actually, right? Because they wanted to make the starter set, like, more inclusive for non-Ultramarines players. So he's probably just a guy. It would be weird, I think, if they included a special character in the starter set, now that I'm thinking about it. So he's probably just a regular dude. Does the Carnifex need a new model? I don't think so. But clearly I'm not in charge. Yeah, maybe every edition does need a new lieutenant. You're right. It would be strange if they didn't have a new lieutenant. Right? Maybe like maybe one of these other dudes who gets murdered is a lieutenant. They have that new apothecary. Dude, this apothecary is sick, by the way. Like a probably Gravis armored apothecary. Doesn't kind of, I guess, no, yeah, he's definitely like got Gravis armor. And gets murdered by a Lictor. Imagine a Lictor doing actual Lictor things instead of like being a bizarre, kind of gamey secondary objective scorer. It'll have to be seen to be believed. Are these Hell Blasters back here? Who are these guys? Can we talk about these guys for a sec? Because they're shooting beam weapons. They're not shooting, bolt bolt guns. What do we think about that, chat? The captain's supposed to be a Terminator. There is a super cool Terminator in the trailer. But I don't know if he's the captain or the sergeant. The cape for the captain is under the camo cloak? Is it really? No. You're pulling my leg. You got me, chat. Are those are those combi guys? Those are Meltaguns, maybe? That would make sense, I guess. Because they have combi Meltas. So are we saying that... Where's the guy who teleports in? So, oh yeah, so these guys would be the Meltagun guys. But the Meltagun looks a little different, right? Because when he shoots the Carnifex earlier, yeah. It's like, rah, rah, I'm on fire. Oh, there is a plasma gun guy in there, yeah. Okay, yeah, it's whoever this guy is. That's the guy who shoots the laser beams. I love that, like, the Godzilla atomic breath right there. So it's definitely not the Meltagun guys, it's definitely this plasma gun guy. Where's the plasma gun guy shooting? I think I skipped by it a million times. Yeah. Give me a freeze frame. I need to see your... So this is the Pyroblaster guy. That... I can't tell what the fuck that is. This gun. That's for sure a plasma gun, right, though? All right. So are we thinking this guy's the new captain? Is that what we're saying? He does look captain-y. And this is, this is the librarian that we see later, right? Because he's like shooting, and then there's that guy shooting. There's only like 3 Terminators here. What's that about? It's not even a whole Terminator squad. What the heck? They all get their own little moment though. And then everybody gets overrun. That guy gets stabbed, and then this guy smites. Okay, cool. What a guy. Terminator definitely is a captain since he has a cape. The other guy with the sword is a sergeant. Oh, there are 2 sword guys. Did I miss one? That would make total sense. Unless they have different loadouts, because we're doing that now. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? Where's the Terminators? Give me those Terminators. Bloop. Terminators come in. Oh, yeah, there's a sergeant here. No, you're definitely right, chat. Yep, this is this guy. It's this guy. Yeah, that makes sense. I got it. Where's the chain gun guy here? Oh, he's like behind the captain. Wait, the chain gun guy like replaces someone. So the captain's here. There's no chain gun guy. This guy's got a Stormbolter. And then next shot, it swings over. And this guy's just here now. And the Stormbolter guy's gone. What happened to Stormbolter guy? He gets stabbed? I like the librarian. I like the librarians having like cool psychic armor, honestly. He does look like a character from League of Legends, but whatever. 40k is League of Legends now. Confirmed. It's only 3 because they're gonna give you the whole set in a box set. Maybe. Maybe you can take Terminators and units of 3 now. That'd be cool. Yeah, so I'm coming around, chat. It's almost assuredly Terminator Captain. This guy's probably a lieutenant. I hope he's a new thing. I hope he's like a fire team leader or something. Master Sergeant. It'd be kind of annoying if he was a lieutenant, but he was just like dramatically different and cooler than all the other lieutenants and had a million of like weapons. It'd be just strange. But, you know, it's a Primaris lieutenant. Anything can happen. All right, chat. This is this rewatching of a trailer that's been out for a week has gone on long enough. I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the video. We'll be back to the regularly scheduled content next week. We'll talk about some tournaments. We'll talk. Hopefully, I think if next week we may be like we might be angling for a data slate update, so we may talk about that. Either it's come out or it will come out soon. And I think that would be good to talk about. So I'd love to do that. And then we can also maybe look at list and stuff. Tomorrow, or through the rest of the week, I'm going to be live with streams over on the Twitchy page. Tomorrow I have a pod finals. I have Speed Hammer on Thursday. Friday is still up in the air, I think, but it looks like I'm going to have a game maybe in the morning. And then this weekend, I'm going to be streaming a 32-player GT. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. And I'm super psyched. Thanks, everybody. And I hope everyone has a good week and stuff. You can definitely expect some more videos about the 10th edition stuff, doing some breakdowns, giving my thoughts, stuff like that. I have a video about Adepticon. I didn't participate in any 40k things at Adepticon, but what I did do is demo a shit ton of indie games, and I think I'm going to go do a breakdown of the ones that I demoed while I was there, because those games need more traction, and I think that will be fun. And then also just some, more general content and stuff like that. So stay out looking for that. Look for that stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to go rest my voice because I am a horse guy, and it's going to be a wrap. So thanks, everyone. Remember to keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming, all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.